In this lesson, we're going to look at stress and crisis. We all get stressed. School, work, family, it's all a part of our stress. And what I'm going to do today is share some knowledge with you about what stress really is and how it affects our patients and other people. Now, stress is it an experience or a stimulus that forces a change. So our bodies like to be in homeostasis. We like to be balanced. And any sort of outside force that changes that balance, that's what we call stress. There are varying degrees of stress, and some stress is minor, some stress is major, and but the thing that you need to remember is it's subjective to each person. So that school project that you may think about being a major stress for you is actually pretty minor to someone else who has a lot of other things going on that ranks other things of importance at a higher stress level. Or maybe that school project, if you and your buddy have the same school project, but he just lost his job, then he may be that school project that was stressing you out may not be as stressful to him. So just remember that it varies on in degrees of severity for your patients and for other people. The other thing that's important to stress is it actually stimulates a physiologic response. It triggers a fight or flight response. It totally jacks for the hormone production and dysregulation, and other times different types of stress. But there are also good types of stress, like working out, that actually promotes muscle growth. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. Stress can usually be classified as good stress or bad stress. Good stress is a positive stimulus. It contributes to growth. It contributes to positive things. So strength training is a good example. Strength. When you strength train or you exercise, what you do is you actually create micro tears in the muscle, and as a response, the muscles grow back stronger to accommodate for that. Then you have things like bad stress. These are negative stimuli. So these things, negative stress actually makes illness worse. It can including different types of mental illness. And this is why we want to encourage good or positive stress and really try to minimize this. So we want to encourage this and minimize this one. When we talk about stress, we want to talk on it on a scale of severity, right? And it's subjective to everyone. And so, for example, like a loss of a parent who's a breadwinner in the family, man, that's definitely a crisis. But if you have a parent that's suffering from cancer and their loss is totally expected, that may not be considered a crisis just because of that level of it being subjective, and also because it's subjective, or it's based on the scale of severity. The important thing you remember is that a crisis is something that an event or a stimulus that forces a major change, either a change in the patient or forces the patient to change. And this is something that you really need to think about. And especially it can exacerbate things like mental illness. So now that we've covered stress and crisis, let's look at the healthy way to respond, and that's through coping. Coping is how well someone responds to stress. It's their ability to respond. And it looks different for everyone. And you'll continue to hear things like coping mechanisms, which are basically a fancy way of saying how well do they respond. And there are lots of things that influence how people cope. And maturity is a big one. So maturity is like some people are just more cognitively developed in terms of coping, even at the same age. Some people, they have the ability to process stressors differently. In addition, some people have different coping tools, or they have different life experience, and it's not uncommon to see all three of these things all go hand in hand, especially seeing people to cope with stress and crisis. And another major factor that leads to a patient's ability to cope well is their family support. So if they have good, solid family support, they feel less isolated, they feel less alone, and family members are often there to provide positivity for that patient. So how do we deal with stress as nurses? So the first thing you want to do is take a look at your patient and figure out how stressed they are. Use that health promotion assessment. You can check that out in the health promotion assessment lesson, and to find out what their baseline stress level is. So you want to find out what baseline is. You want to find out what triggers their stress. So these things, that gives you a good assessment and a good solid foundation to figure out where they are in their stress levels. You also want to make sure that you're managing their symptoms of the illness, including their stress-induced symptoms. If you have a patient that's in a hypertensive crisis, meaning their blood pressure is all jacked up and it's really high, and they're concerned that they're missing work, and their blood pressure is like, let's say it's 220 over 120, you better be working on this guy right here. You have to manage their symptoms. The other thing you can do is promote health and wellness. So, hey, exercise, mobility, offer your resources, your other healthcare providers, your mental health resources, your other resources. So if they're suffering like a financial hardship, see what resources your facility offers for them. So be their advocate and make sure that you're using your therapeutic relationship and your therapeutic communication skills. Today, our nursing concept really helped drive home building interpersonal relationships and while our patients are coping with stress and crisis. So let's recap for today. There are good and bad types of stress. They can both positively and negatively affect your patient. Everybody perceives stress differently, so trust your patient when they tell you that you're stressed. Extreme stress is crisis, and that usually means a patient needs a change or a patient will change. Coping is how the patient deals and responds to stress. Some people cope better than others. And you also want to make sure that you manage the illness. Don't get wrapped up in this idea of that stress is the thing that we have to manage your stress, Remember that blood pressure of 220 over 120? You got to work on that guy. Manage your patient first. So that's it for our lesson today. Make sure you check out all the resources attached to this lesson. Now go out and be your best selves today. And as always, happy nursing.